What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube, and today I've got some football focus. All off-season long, I've been covering the Steelers position-by-position breakdown, talking about who's on the bubble, who is going to make the team, who might not, who could surprise you, and kind of what the team and the core roster is going to look like after free agency and the draft. I've already covered a bunch of positions on this channel, so if you guys want to see quarterbacks, draft picks, free agent pickup videos, offensive line, defensive line, inside linebacker, outside linebacker, I've covered all those positions in depth, talking about the starters, the backups, and the people on the bubble, and who could contribute to us in 2022/23. We have a very interesting roster, and there's a lot of breakdowns to be done. So today, I wanted to do a quicker video. It's going to be a little shorter because the position's a little more straightforward and a little bit more truncated and small. That is the Pittsburgh Steelers cornerback spots. We're talking about the corners, which last season, as one of the anchors of the defense, did not always hold up that well. Pass protection was decent, but it was feast or famine. There were times when the pass protection looked really good, and a lot of times that it got victimized quite a bit against the upper echelon teams. Of course, the run defense was the biggest weakness, and again, I've already covered the front three and the defensive line. I've covered the inside and outside linebacker, so hopefully those things can be improved this season. But our pass defense needs to get a little more tight and more consistent to make us kind of the physical team we were known to be in the glory days. Pittsburgh's corners last year, like I said, weren't terrible, but I think we're out of position a lot. We had some injuries, we had some people miscast in certain spots, and we had some growing pains for some younger players. Now, there are 6 people that I have written down here that I think are going to be the 6 people in contention for those spots. Now, Pittsburgh usually keeps 5 to 6 corners on this roster. 5 at least, usually 6, and we have 6 guys that are kind of the main guys that are fighting for spots this year. First things first, the big changes are Joe Hayden out after a long time here in Pittsburgh and Levi Wallace in. Now, Joe Hayden, of course, was a longtime Cleveland Brown, got signed on his kind of the downside of his peak through the twilight years of his career. He was let go. It's sad to lose a guy like that. He's a physical guy. He's a Pittsburgh Steeler kind of through and through. His mentality as a Steeler. He was a good locker room leader, good attitude, but he was getting injured a lot the last 2 or 3 seasons. His performance was going down. He was getting burnt for the first time in his career in these last 2 years, and he just was not consistent on the field. He wasn't always out there, and when he was not always peak Joe Hayden like he had been in the past. So him being gone, I think, is an addition by subtraction, as much as I hate to say that. I love Joe Hayden, I love his attitude, but again, his age and his health were both kind of on the decline, so I think it was time to lose him. That being said, we had 2 big things to address. Number one, who was going to be the number 1 corner on this roster based on re-signings, and who was going to come in as a free agent to fill that second spot. Because the other starter last season, for the most part, was Cameron Sutton. That was the guy on the other side with Hayden, and then once Weatherspoon got signed, once Hayden went down with injury, Sutton started for in Hayden's number 2 spot, Weatherspoon's spot. And that was Cam Sutton. And Cam Sutton, again, I sang his praises all season long 2 years ago when he was the number 3/number 4 guy. When Cam Sutton and Mike Hilton were kind of playing those 3 and 4 spots, Sutton came in, he was the number 4, probably one of the better dime, like number 4 dime/quarter cornerbacks in the NFL. I thought he was a great number 4. And when Mike Hilton went down 2 years ago before his contract season, I thought he was a very good number 3. I think he's a great slot corner. I think he's underrated in the slot. I think he filled in for Mike Hilton very nicely, so much so that when Mike Hilton's contract was due and he was going to get big money elsewhere, he became more expendable. He's not, Sutton is not as good as Hilton as far as the edge blitz and kind of the big play ability, but as far as like slot coverage, I think he was a better pass coverer than Mike Hilton, and I think he was more physical. So maybe he wasn't the tackler that Hilton was, but he would still be a very solid number 3 that would fill in nicely for us. But last year, like I said, we didn't really have a number 2 corner to start the year after Steven Nelson left. And then once we did get Ahkello Weatherspoon, Joe Hayden started getting hurt. So Sutton was always in that number 2 spot playing on the outside. And Sutton is not as good on the outside whatsoever. So the thing became, okay, who's going to replace Hayden as the number 1, and who's going to replace Sutton as the number 2 to push Sutton to the number 3? We addressed both of those this offseason. Number 1, bringing back our best corner from last year, Ahkello Weatherspoon. It took us a while to sign him, it was taking us a little bit too long for my liking. And then the report was he got signed, and then he wasn't signed, and then he was talking to somebody else, and then he did get signed. So Ahkello Weatherspoon is back for Pittsburgh. Again, he was an underrated piece for, I think, the 49ers before us. He never really saw his full potential. He showed big glimpses of huge hope for that team. It was either 49ers or Seahawks, but I think it was the 49ers. Maybe it was both. I forget. But Weatherspoon came to Pittsburgh in the second half of the season and kind of galvanized and improved our pass coverage with his physicality on the outside. He was reading routes well. He was physical. He was good in the air. He got a few interceptions. He got a few key plays in the other team's red zones last year, including the game that I went to against Tennessee last year. So Weatherspoon showed up as a number one corner. I liked his work a lot last year, and I thought he was a top priority to re-sign this offseason. He did get re-signed, and now he's got more time and a full season and a full camp and a full preseason to play with us, which he did not really get last year. So Weatherspoon comes back, and I think he's going to be even better with a full time to play under the new defensive gurus and play under the system, which he didn't get for us last year. So Weatherspoon back at the number one, replacing Hayden, I think is an upgrade. Also bringing in Levi Wallace, another physical guy from Buffalo. He was a four-year player in Buffalo. Started for 3 seasons and part of 4, I believe. Played, I think, in 6 or 7 games in his rookie season 4 years ago. And then over the last 3 seasons played 16, 12, and 17 games. So 2 of the last 3 seasons he played in full. Was very durable. Did miss a few games in the 2020 campaign, but for the most part has played almost all of his games in the last 3 years. And he's a very physical guy. I like his pursuit in the air, much like Weatherspoon. I like how he dives after balls. He reads plays pretty well. He's good at jumping routes. Over the past 4 years, he's gotten 6 interceptions. Those came in the last 3 seasons. He got 2 apiece in the last 3 years. Also a forced fumble and a fumble recovery. He's played pretty well against Pittsburgh. He also got a very timely interception against the Patriots in last year's playoffs to help them seal their playoff victory. So I really enjoy Wallace. A big game player, physical on the outside, can be physical without pass interfering, looks back for the ball, seems to locate the ball well in the air, and seems to jump routes well. So I think adding Weatherspoon and Levi Wallace, their strengths are playing those outside corners, which now means that our guy, Cameron Sutton, can go back to the inside where he thrived as the 4th guy / backup to Mike Hilton, and then had a very good full season as our number 3 2 years ago before filling into the outside. So now, again, we're bringing Wallace in, we're bringing back Weatherspoon under a full season, and we're bumping Sutton back to his strong spot at the number 3. I like those 3 guys in those spots. With Weatherspoon, Wallace on the outside, and Sutton on the inside, those 3 are, as long as they can stay healthy, we've got 3 very good starters in their right spots this year. I think with that alone, I think that our pass coverage will get better. Then you look at the other outside spot, and Jamespierre. 2 guys fighting, I think, for their jobs this year, Jamespierre and Justin Layne. A little more so Justin Layne. He's in his final season with us, and he was a draft pick, so he's going to be a little higher up on the totem pole as far as money we owe him if we were to bring him back. Jamespierre had a really good camp 2 years ago, and then has never really put it together on the field. He's had a few good moments on the field, looked really good in camp, looked pretty good in preseason, and then just the past 2 years on the field when he's had to fill in, he's not really gotten on the field much, which tells you, in spite of injury, how we didn't believe in him. Going out to get Weatherspoon, that kind of shows that Pierre was not kind of meant for full-time play. If we had to go sign another corner, that tells you right there that he wasn't adapting as fast as we expected. And when he has been on the field, like I said, he's made a few plays. He's not been all bad, but he's largely been exposed playing against full-time starters. So yes, he looks good in camp and pretty good in preseason, but when it comes to big plays and big moments and better teams, he kind of gets exposed a little bit. So I think the legend of Jamespierre may be coming to an end, but again, he might have 1 more year on his deal with us because he's much cheaper and was an undrafted free agent versus Justin Layne being a draft pick. So if we're looking at keeping 5 guys, this is where one of those 2 might be going. Now looking at the inside, I forgot her name here. Looking at the inside, Trey Norwood, he gets listed at safety a lot. He was listed as a utility guy by Tomlin, and then he's been kind of called a safety a lot on the depth charts this year. But we brought in 2 safety veterans on top of Minka and Edmonds. We re-signed Edmonds, and we re-signed a bigger contract for Minka, and we signed 2 veteran backups. So I don't really know if there's room as a safety for Norwood, even though that's kind of what he looks like. But I like kind of what he showed us last year at the slot corner spot. That to me was probably his strongest spot. Of course, there were moments that he got beat, but I feel like for the most part, especially early in the season, he was jumping balls, he was making pretty good tackles, he was playing a lot bigger in his gameplay than he was in his physical stature. He's an undersized guy who looks quick but doesn't look that physical, which is why he was suited for safety when he got drafted. But I feel like in playing more at the slot corner spot, he tackles and plays bigger and harder and more physical than we expected him to. And again, with us signing 2 veteran safeties and bringing back the 2 guys we at the starter spots, I don't know if there's much of a spot for Norwood as a safety. He might play that kind of in between, that dime quarter kind of sub package stuff once in a while at safety. But I think his bread and butter really is in the slot. So I think he winds up staying on the roster as a corner. I could be wrong. He could outplay one of the veterans, but I think he comes back as a slot corner for us. And there's Arthur Mullet. I believe we got him back. I thought I saw him listed, or I'm not sure if I missed him or not. But he played for us last year coming over from the Jets, and he wasn't healthy a lot of the season. But when he was in there, I like him. I think he's one of our better tackling corners. Coming out of the slot on blitzes and tackling physically in terms of the running game and blitzing the quarterback, he's kind of the closest thing to Mike Hilton that we have. Not always the best in coverage and not always the best against faster receivers. But again, when it comes to blitzing, tackling in the backfield, kind of being a physical downhill player like Mike Hilton, I think he's the closest to Hilton. So, and again, I'm not entirely sure if he did get signed somewhere else. I'm pretty sure he got brought back to Pittsburgh on a cheap deal. So now you look at Weatherspoon and Wallace are guaranteed on the outside. Sutton's guaranteed on the inside. That's 3. Norwood, I think, is guaranteed on the inside. That's 4. Now you look at 3 more spots. Jamespierre, Justin Lane, and Mullet. I think Mullet comes back because, again, he's a veteran, played for the Jets for a while, came back cheap. I think Mullet stays on this roster, and he also makes plays in special teams, which makes him more valuable. So I think he stays there. Justin Lane makes plays on special teams, but does not play very well on the field, in my opinion. I've not been a fan of his work on the field. Jamespierre, again, plays really good in camp and preseason, but hasn't translated to the field very much, and also doesn't do much on special teams. So now we're looking at the 6 guys, right? So Weatherspoon, Sutton, and Wallace are in. I think Norwood and Mullet are in. That's 5 spots right there. If we're going to keep a 6th guy, which we usually do, it comes down to Pierre or Lane. This feels to me like it's down to preseason because Lane is on the last year of his deal, so I don't think he comes back either way, unless he really shocks us. But I think Lane's on his way out. But he has a higher pedigree than Pierre. Pierre's shown higher upsides, but is not really translated to the field. So one of those 2 guys, I think, is gone. Again, could Mullet be on the bubble? Possibly, yes. Could Norwood be saved as a safety and not a corner to save an extra spot for somebody? Possibly. Those are kind of the spots to look at. So what do you think of our new revamped starters on the outside and inside? What do you think of the backups? Who really impressed you last year? Did someone like Pierre show you enough to stay on the roster? Does someone like Lane still have something left in the tank? What do you think of the slot guys and the backups, like Mullet and Norwood? What do you think? Tell me in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like these deep dives. And if you want to see more of these positional breakdowns, I'm going to try and bring you guys the safety video in probably the next 4 or 5 days. So check back later toward the end of this week for the safety breakdown. And if you guys want to see more of these, please tell me in the comments below. Go Steelers. I will see you soon.